So yes, hello Amanda, and if anyone else is joining. So I'll start off by saying, yeah, I'm Kiran, work as a learning design manager for the FONS EdTech team, and I'm joined by Helen Walkey, education insight and evaluation analyst. And we wanted to try to make this session a little bit more interactive and have actually a question for you, where you're from, or joining us from. So if you could just add that to the chat, that would be great. And we also wanted to know if you've had any experience of student partnerships, and yes or no, or a little bit more detail will be helpful as well.
I don't in this context, no. We do have student internships in other areas. So we have like marketing ones, and I think there's one in HR and that sort of thing. But I've just caught my eye, and I just thought, oh, that could be quite a nice way forward.
Okay, good to know. So over to you, Helen. What are we going to talk about in this session?
So we are going to first introduce our partnership scheme, so our staff student partnership scheme, our internship scheme that we've set up, then talk about the scheme practicalities, a bit about our objectives and indicators of success so far, then have a group discussion, or small group discussion, and some summing up.
So we've got some learning outcomes. So as we said earlier, set up a student staff partnership scheme with more confidence. We hope by sharing this, people will be more inclined to start one. And also be aware of the constraints and opportunities that lie when we start something like this. Give some practical solutions to how to manage workload and how that can be adjusted to your context. And then demonstrate how staff student partnerships can support HE institutions like ours and their agendas to develop graduate skills, which I think is quite common nowadays, and graduate skills and attributes that build on learning technology community practice. Okay, so the partnership scheme, Helen.
So at Imperial College, we had a new learning and teaching strategy in 2018 with aims that included increasing innovation in teaching and extending use of learning technology. Also to work with students as co-creators and co-innovators to form staff-student partnerships, and to support the development of graduate attributes, so those attributes and competencies that employers are looking for on top of what they learn through their academic discipline. So in response to this, we set up a paid internship scheme where students would have the opportunity to work as part of our EdTech lab for 5 weeks during the summer. And we've run this now for 2 years in 2019 and 2020. And the scheme involved the students applying, and we interviewed them, so asked them questions in a semi-formal interview, and they had to do tests as well. We had some onboarding activities when they started, and then we got them set to work on projects where they would work in teams with each other and with members of the EdTech lab. And the scheme, particularly in 2020, had a focus on reflective practice. And we ended it with either exit interviews or presentations to sum up the interns' time with us and really reflect on what we'd achieved together. And in our context, the opportunities for the students were to get a real world experience of work that they can relate to their educational experience, and in which they could work as co-innovators. They could increase their technical skills and also work on strengthening the graduate attributes they were developing through their programs. And for us, it gave us the unique insights of students who are our main user group, but a different group of students to the ones we would normally come into contact with through teaching and learning committees, who are the student union reps. And the chance to work with intelligent, capable, and adaptable people. The challenges were that the students were different to staff, so they haven't had the same training as learning technologists and lacked that depth of knowledge and experience in EdTech and in the workplace. So they might not realise, for example, that tools need to meet accessibility regulations, and they might not naturally think of extensions to tasks without prompting. So we just needed to support them in a different way. And in 2020, of course, we had additional challenges due to the pandemic, where we had to run the scheme entirely online. Next slide, please. So this just gives a snapshot of the facts and figures. So over the 2 years, we've had 10 student interns, 4 in 2019, 6 in 2020, and they came from 3 of the 4 academic disciplines that are covered in our faculty at undergraduate level. And we've had either 2 or 3 staff scheme leaders, and then the interns worked with a number of other members of the team. And the pie chart on the right shows an additional challenge in 2020 that we had students in different time zones, including one who was in China. Back to you, Kiran.
So I'm going to talk about the scheme practicalities and specifically about how we divvied up the workload. And no doubt there is some planning that goes into this. So you see how we approached it in 2019. It was a major spreadsheet. So, you know, some project ID numbers to the left and some broken down tasks for students to pick up and people they could talk to or nominated technical experts that we, as we call them, they could talk to and ask for feedback. And it was initially quite, even though we were in the same room, left to this spreadsheet and just, you know, emails and unnecessarily kind of maybe distancing ourselves, even though we're in the same room a lot of the time. Until this kind of became a bit more apparent that they needed a bit more guidance on that. And we started having stand-ups, as we call them. So literally 5 minutes in the morning, just to make sure they were happy, they knew what they were going to crack on with, and they were not waiting around. So yeah, just making sure that they were always, you know, tagging along. And in terms of task delegations, as you can see, these were really broken down and so needed, you know, a lot of guidance in terms of exactly what they needed to do. And sometimes they approach those tasks still with not enough depth. And that's one of those things that we really discovered, that, you know, having those stand-ups helped because you could really not write down everything that you kind of intended for them to do. We also had a situation where one of the interns were working longer than the others for an additional week, and he probably didn't have the same experience and had to rely on a lot of documentation and just trying to tie loose ends in his last week. And yeah, that came across a little bit unfair. And, you know, we really took on board some of the feedback and thought about how we wanted to run things differently and ensuring there's a real team sense and feeling about, you know, everyone contributing, etc., etc. And that time we also used, you know, we had access to MS Teams, but it was very sporadic and again project based. So there were 2 projects that probably needed more discussion or documentation. They created their own channels and, you know, kept it more like a document repository. And we also had another shared file system which is called Box, which they again used to document the projects and the progress that they were doing, and any outputs that they were keeping or kept in, any outputs they were coming up with were kept in Box. So it was a little bit over the place, I guess. And come 2020, you know, when everything had to be fully online, Teams really became, you know, our place to go, and we used something called Planner, the Planner board. And set up cards, and you can see hopefully a little bit from the headings here. We also really thought about allocating tasks that initially would lead to more team cohesion and good teamwork ethics. So they were not so much about outputs. It's more about learning about the EdTech team even, and understanding the kind of processes that we have. And also one of their first tasks was, as part of the interview task, we just asked them to share it with each other. So just to get them to become more comfortable about sharing their ideas. and having that culture of we are better than me. So yeah, it was really thought through. The things that we really thought about, trying to compensate for not being in the office, we set up the buddy scheme. So we really had 2 cohorts, as we call it. And so the first students that started with us became buddies, or in a way helped with the induction process when the second cohort joined later in the summer. And that really helped with the whole induction and capitalizing on the knowledge they had, and them also getting the sense that they really had learned and could share what they knew. We carried on with the stand-ups, and this was again the board was about allocating tasks on Monday with the 1 weekly time window, and Wednesday was kind of like health check, whether things were clear enough or there was some hurdles that need to be ironed out, and then Friday was more like, did we achieve what we wanted to achieve, and is it ready for review by another member in the EdTech team. So yeah, I think it was much more structured. The online really forced us to be much more articulate and planned in the way we were going to look over or oversee the workload that students had. We also added an element of reflective diaries. In 2019, students were asked to keep notes of the work that they were doing, and they were more probably addressed as kind of lab books. But reflective diaries became much more present here, where we actually prompted students to reflect and gave them feedback on their reflections as well. So we were really engaged with them asynchronously as well. So because we did not necessarily have loads of time, we could at least go back and give them feedbacks elsewhere. And I think that really helped with, again, creating that sense of team, creating that sense that they had someone to talk to, and yeah, break that kind of isolation that may happen otherwise working remotely. So I think I covered most bits, I think. Oh yes, sorry. So just another thing that I just wanted to mention was that we also had these channels set up that were specifically for students to talk to each other. So it was quite deliberate, and then had a Q&A channel again where they were asked to post any questions if they were stuck. So having a very, very open and kind of collegial way for them to get in touch with us, not just emails. So yeah, I think that really helped with having a visual representation throughout both of what the work they could do and where they could have the conversations helped in MS Teams. So just very quickly giving you an example of what may happen in this whole feedback cycle that I've been mentioning. So if one of the projects that students picked up was looking at the caption accuracy of our lecture captures from Panopto, which is our kind of lecture captioning tool. So they got some requirements there from us that we wanted some diff files, and then gave them some instructions. Can you look into whether there's differences between Panopto, what Panopto does and what Verbit does, and let us know. And then we let them explore a little bit and think about how they want to do the task. They give us they share their methodology, and we would give them some kind of feedback or review what their plans are carrying out the task, and then they would either amend or adjust accordingly, and then before they have something that we can review. Then there'll be a final review again of what they want to really think that, what they want to propose. And this time they just, used Python. And that was not something we were expecting. It was their suggestion, they'll do Python and then think of a way to do this code. And once we're all happy, we talk about releasing that. And this time around, it was really fruitful. We really helped the departments to make a decision whether it was worth for them to actually buy into a subscription or Verbit, that tool, as the captions were not scientifically accurate enough otherwise. So yeah, when we reflect on this, we can really see that they have opportunities to get important work carried out, and if the workload is high, we could not necessarily fit it around our workload, but students being there, they could do something like this for us in a quite a unique way. So over to you, Helen, who's going to talk about developing those skills and building a community of practice.
So I'm going to say a little bit about these objectives that we've had and the indicators that we're at least moving towards achieving those objectives. So this slide shows the 7 graduate attributes or competencies that Imperial would like students to develop during their degree programs. And I'm going to give examples of how we're supporting some of these, so not all of them, some of them, using the words of our interns. So looking at the first 2 that I've highlighted, which are about effective team working across cultural, international and disciplinary boundaries, and also understanding and valuing different cultures and perspectives. One of our interns, when talking about the teamwork that they'd undertaken, said, "I've learned how to communicate, discuss and analyze things from different perspectives, and how conflicts are being solved and better ideas are being produced." And then one of the other graduate attributes that I want to highlight is the opportunity to innovatively apply skills to tackling complex real-world problems. And again, a different one of our student interns was talking about the caption comparison task that Kiran's already described, said, "One of the tasks I liked best was the captions comparison, because I felt like I could really contribute something unique from my study, having learned some Python." And as Kiran has said, it was the intern's decision to center their solution around Python. And the other indicator of success we wanted to share with you here is, or at least the steps we're taking towards building a community of EdTech practice that's shared across staff and the students. And this has 2 parts: the behaviors developed during the internship and those developed afterwards. So during the internship, we hoped to see that the students would contribute ideas, create solutions, and produce guidance. And the following quotes from 2 of the interns demonstrate how they felt about this aspect. So this is an experience of delivering multimodal learning for the students, and I really like this internship because I really see that I'm being useful, that I'm contributing, I'm helping others with the new situation. So the new situation here being dealing with multimodal learning. And another said, "I'm really grateful to how you made us feel part of the team, even though we were just on a 5-week internship. For example, asking our views in team meetings or getting our advice on the best approach to a task or project." And we also hoped that they would develop an understanding of how and why we use EdTech tools in our institution. And we don't have strong evidence for this yet, but certainly an appreciation of what we do in the EdTech lab. I'm learning a whole different side to Imperial, the people behind the scenes that help lecturers deliver the content they produce, but also help students thrive. And then after the internship, our hopes are that the students will model use of the tools that they became more familiar with during their internship back in their departments, so back on their degree programs. And this quote gives at least an indication that the confidence is there to do that. So using Teams and Blackboard as well, I've learned so much about this stuff. So especially as we go into next year, we will be using Teams much more in university, and having this knowledge will definitely help there. And lastly, we hope that the interns will become EdTech advocates or champions in their departments. And the final quote gives some evidence of this starting to happen. Today, I've talked to my personal tutor. She asked me if I had any ideas about how staff could help students who have difficulties in using the technology. That reminded me of the How to Collaborate in MS Teams document I've been working on during my last week of the internship. Could you please share it with her if you have a finalized document?
I think we have a bit of a discussion time now. We're running out of time, so I think we can just skip this. These were just examples of some projects that the students contributed to, and we're happy to share this within the slide.